Number 7. Elizabeth Holmes, The Blood Testing Fantasy. Elizabeth Holmes was a freshman at Stanford studying chemical engineering in 2002. At 19, she developed a concept for a wearable patch that could administer drugs, monitor blood variables, and automatically adjust dosages. She filed a patent in 2003, dropped out of Stanford, and started her company Theranos with a promise to revolutionize the healthcare industry. She developed a device called the Edison that could run over 200 medical tests using just a single drop of blood, delivering results in hours instead of days. No more needles, no more expensive lab visits, instant detection of cancer, cholesterol, or mineral deficiencies. By 2014, she convinced the world completely, becoming the youngest self-made female billionaire with a net worth of $4.5 billion. She raised over $900 million from investors like Rupert Murdoch, Betsy DeVos, and Larry Ellison. Her board included Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, and Defense Secretary James Mattis. She cultivated a Steve Jobs persona with black turtlenecks. But the problem was that the Edison didn't work and never had. Small blood samples rupture cells, making accurate testing impossible. Theranos secretly ran tests on standard Siemens machines bought from competitors. Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou exposed the fraud in 2015. And in January 2022, Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of wire fraud and sentenced to over 11 years in federal prison. She and her partner, Ramesh Balwani, were ordered to pay $452 million in restitution. You can fake charisma and presentations, but you cannot fake biochemistry. Number 6. Percival Lowell, the Martian architect. Percival Lowell was an American astronomer born into a wealthy Bostonian family. He graduated from Harvard with honors in mathematics and built one of America's finest observatories. In 1894, he constructed Lowell Observatory, a state-of-the-art facility in Flagstaff, Arizona, with one obsessive goal: map the civilization on Mars. He'd read Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli's work describing canalis on Mars, which meant channels in Italian. Lowell mistranslated it as canals and assumed it was artificial waterways built by intelligent beings. For 15 years, Lowell spent his nights documenting what he saw, meticulously sketching hundreds of intricate canals crisscrossing Mars. He wrote 3 books convincing the public that a dying Martian race was pumping water from the polar ice caps to the equator to survive planetary desertification. His wealth, education, enthusiasm, and charisma made him believable. It wasn't until 1965 when NASA's Mariner 4 probe flew past Mars and took close-up pictures, providing evidence that Mars is a dead crater desert with no canals and no Martian civilization. Percival Lowell spent 15 years convinced he was documenting an alien civilization, but it wasn't all a waste because his observatory is still used today for astronomical research and studies. Number 5. John Kanzius, The Saltwater That Burns. John Kanzius was a retired broadcast engineer working on a machine to cure cancer using targeted radio wave therapy. In 2007, during an experiment, he accidentally bumped a test tube of salt water near his radio frequency generator. It sparked, and he discovered that when he blasted salt water with 13.56 megahertz radio waves, the water ignited and burned. The media exploded, thinking he found a solution to the energy crisis. But what Kanzius was actually doing was using radio waves to separate water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen gas through a process called electrolysis, and the hydrogen was burning. And there was zero net energy gain because the radio wave generator actually consumed far more electricity than the burning hydrogen produced. Kanzius died of leukemia in 2009, still believing he'd made a breakthrough. His cancer therapy research showed some promise, but the water burning demonstration was just physics creating a spectacular visual effect with no practical application. Number 4, Trofim Lysenko, the dictator of biology. Trofim Lysenko was a Soviet agronomist and scientist who became the most powerful biologist in the Soviet Union, not through scientific achievement but through political savvy. In the 1930s, while the rest of the world embraced Mendelian genetics, Lysenko convinced Stalin that genetics was pseudoscience created by capitalists. He promoted vernalization and Lamarckism, the idea that you could train crops to grow in winter by soaking seeds in freezing water and that plants would pass these acquired traits to offspring. It was biologically impossible, but it aligned with communist ideology that nature, like people, could be reshaped by the state. Stalin backed him, and Lysenko was appointed director of the Institute of Genetics. He was given absolute authority over Soviet agriculture. He banned Mendelian genetics, had over 3,000 biologists fired, imprisoned, or executed, including Nikolai Vavilov, whom was one of the world's leading geneticists. Lysenko's agricultural methods led to catastrophic crop failures and famines killing millions. When Mao Zedong adopted Lysenko's theories during China's Great Leap Forward, an estimated 30 to 45 million people starved, and the Soviet Union didn't officially reject his pseudoscience until 1964, after decades of agricultural disaster and mass deaths. Number 3, Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann, the cold fusion meltdown. Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann were two respected chemists. Pons was chair of the chemistry department at the University of Utah. Fleischmann was a fellow of the Royal Society and one of the world's leading electrochemists. In 1989, they claimed they had achieved cold fusion, a nuclear reaction at room temperature using heavy water and a palladium electrode. If true, they'd solved the global energy crisis with clean, infinite, and cheap power. Their credentials made it believable. Utah immediately approved $5 million in research funding. Congress prepared to allocate millions more. Major media declared it the discovery of the century. But Pons and Fleischmann had skipped peer review, rushing to announce before competitors could publish similar work. When physicists tried replicating the experiment, nobody could reproduce it. It turned out their calorimeter was miscalibrated. They hadn't discovered a new form of energy. They discovered how to measure temperature incorrectly. Their reputations were destroyed, and both fled to France to continue research funded by Toyota, which quietly shut down the project years later. Cold fusion became synonymous with scientific fraud, and their eagerness for recognition and pressure from their university to secure funding led them to bypass the scientific method, resulting in professional ruin. Number 2, Franz Joseph Gall, the skull reading pseudoscience. Franz Joseph Gall was a German physician and pioneering neuroanatomist in the late 18th century. He made contributions to brain science, correctly identifying that different brain regions control different functions and that gray matter processes information while white matter transmits it. These were revolutionary insights. But then Gall introduced phrenology, the study of skull shape to determine personality and mental capacity. He claimed the brain consisted of 27 distinct organs, each responsible for specific traits like benevolence, destructiveness, or secretiveness. You could measure someone's character by feeling bumps on their head. A bump behind your ear meant a large organ of destructiveness. A prominent forehead indicated high benevolence. His early legitimate neuroscience gave him credibility. And for over half a century, phrenology was considered serious science. Employers used it in hiring decisions, courts used it to assess criminal defendants, and it was even weaponized to justify slavery and racial hierarchies by claiming different skull structures between races. It wasn't until the mid-19th century that neuroscientists proved that brain functions are internal with zero correlation to skull shape. Gall had invented a tactile horoscope that felt empirical because you could physically touch someone's head but had no biological nor scientific basis. It's literally judging things based off how it looks without any factual nor concrete evidence. Number 1. René Blondlot, the invisible rays that didn't exist. René Blondlot was a French physicist when he announced his discovery in 1903. He'd already made significant contributions to electromagnetism and X-ray research. Shortly after German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen's Nobel Prize-winning discovery of X-rays, Blondlot claimed he'd found a new form of radiation he called N-rays. He reported that N-rays were emitted by most substances, including metals, the sun, and even human nerves. His reputation made the claim credible, and dozens of prominent French scientists confirmed the findings, publishing over 300 papers about N-ray properties. It became a matter of national pride, France's answer to Germany's X-rays. The French Academy of Sciences awarded Blondlot the prestigious Lalande Prize, but American physicist Robert Wood was unable to detect the N-rays in his own lab, so he visited Blondlot's lab in 1904 and watched a demonstration. In the darkness, Wood secretly removed the essential aluminum prism that was supposedly generating the N-rays. Blondlot continued narrating the detection of rays, completely unaware the critical component was gone. The N-rays were hallucination born from observer bias. And when Wood published his findings, the N-ray phenomenon collapsed overnight. Blondlot never accepted he was wrong and continued working on it afterwards. And to this day, there has been zero progress nor discussion on N-rays because it truly was a non-existent phenomena. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to see more.